And you were getting nightgown me today just because I haven't gotten dressed yet. This is this is life in Costa Rica. You don't have any schedule. There are no such thing as you got to do X, Y, and Z now. The Costa Rican philosophy is do it all later. Kira, I wanted to acknowledge your comment. I saw it up front. I wish they would not be fighting like that. You don't have to yeah, you don't have to accept that, but you don't have to participate. That's one of the things. Even though I knocked heads with Roadhog, I'm not interested in having a fight with him. Peace, just let him go on and do his own thing. I hope he contacts West Mercia police if he is being harassed by Ned. That happens. I am feeling better, feeling so much better because I got to talk about this for half a second because this is Costa Rican medicine. Okay, in the States, I had worse problems with my asthma than I've had here. This has actually been a better experience for me. But because of the costs of medicines, even with insurance in the States, I tended not to medicate until I got way, way sicker than I should. Hey, Ginger. Java Man and Sheila and Kira. Yeah, you can tell I'm kind of goofy this morning. I did something different yesterday, something that would have been impossible in the States. In the States, I would wait before I would even use my nebulizer because if I could get it turned off with cheap over-the-counter drugs or my allergy pills, I would do it. I would do that, and I would not worry about taking any of the prescription stuff I had for asthma. It was, why would I do that? Even with the insurance, the costs. Here, that's not a thing. The costs up front are okay compared to in the States. Like I said, one of the medications I'm on is over $1,000 a month. If you don't have insurance in the States, I would probably be paying, maybe a couple hundred through insurance and taking it sparingly. Here, it's less than $50. The last time I bought it, it was like 45, I think, or 42, which is a whole lot easier to deal with than that huge bill. So there's that. Everything here is a lot cheaper as far as medical care goes. So yesterday I did something crazy that I would have never done in the States. I immediately medicated with everything. I threw the piles of neb treatment at it instead of waiting to see if this was going to pass once I left. I'm sorry, I got spoons. I have dishes here I got to take back because the cat has been eating the milk. So anyway, long story short, I medicated big time. I got home, I pushed, and I took 1/16 of my pot brownie, my little edible, since I can't get medical marijuana here. And I gotta say, I am so much better today, so much better. It just like turned it off. Instead of me dragging around for a week or more with varying degrees of my lungs cooperating, I'm up and around today. Java Man, that horse dewormer thing, I have a girlfriend here who wanted it. And she asked me to go to get it for her. And I had to say no. I said, I'm not enabling that. My husband went and got it for her. And I got on to him and said, why are you doing that? And he said, because she's not going to stop. So I tried everything in my power to stop her from doing that. And she had less trouble here getting it than you would in the States. Much less trouble. So I see we're going to have to talk about some things here. And I wanted to talk about Costa Rican medicine versus U.S. medicine, which I just told you my story. I medicated earlier because the drugs are cheaper. They're more easily obtained here than they are in the States. Everything except the medical marijuana. And the medical marijuana was something I only did when it got real bad. So instead of waiting to get real bad, I started medicating like a fiend when I first had problems. Never done that before. I have some gummies I found in my son's room. I can't stand them. Oh, Kara, I'm going to say something outrageous. I don't like pot anymore. When I was a teenager, you'd have thought I was a Rastafarian. I smoked so much dope, it was stupid. So stupid. But I look back and that's when my asthma disappeared. So I guess it had some kind of effect on that I didn't even know. But the other thing to do with that is that I no longer enjoy that feeling. So I have to be really careful. Java man, I thought about that. I thought about that. I certainly thought about that. And I certainly talked to her. I showed her studies from the NIH and other places that said that this was not a helpful thing for COVID, that had no effect on it, good or bad. So I don't like being stoned. I really don't. So when I've taken edible, when I was in the States, because in the States I had a medical marijuana card because of the asthma. But even then, I was kind of careful about using it because, expense. Here, not so much. I don't like being stoned. And I had to figure out where that point is with this friend of mine's brownies that she openly sells at the farmer's market, even though weed is definitely illegal here. So I don't like feeling that way. I feel like a goldfish, like I have a 4-second attention span only, and then I forget what I'm talking about. I am feeling quite well, Ginger Lee. We live near university. In a 4-block radius, we have 8 pot stores and only 1 liquor store. Kara, that's pretty awesome. Java Man, I am of the opinion that she has been hit with another strike. She's pretending she's got COVID or a bad cold to cover that. Everybody's going, wait, now if she had another strike, she would be off the internet. Not necessarily, because the way that it works on YouTube, you can only have 3 strikes within 90 days. And it has to be 3 strikes within 90 days. It can't just be a strike over here at 18 months, a strike a year ago. So, yeah, something is up. Something is definitely up. Michigan has recreational. I didn't recover from opioid and heroin 15 years. Kara, does that mean you could use it? Could you use and not chance addiction? I know for me, for opioids and all that, I must not have an addictive personality. I have an opinion about that. Just from what I've experienced when I had to go on OxyContin for a long time because I had injured myself and I was waiting for my insurance company to approve the surgery. Can you imagine that? I couldn't use my right arm. They wouldn't approve the surgery until I went to so many months of physical therapy, the whole 9 yards. So my right arm was useless for like 9 months. And that was crazy. And I became pretty ambidextrous at that point. But anyway, nope, I will not take anything. I can certainly understand that. But during those times of taking the opioids and then getting off them when I needed to get off and dealing with some physical symptoms of addiction, physical, not psychological, I have concluded that people that become addicted to substances, there's something different about their brain. And that's not to shame anybody. I think this is an area they need to do a lot more research on and come up with a lot more medical solutions. Come up with a real solution that helps people who do get addicted. I never liked OxyContin. It always made me feel like I was sitting by the side of the road like a rutabaga fall off the farm truck without ideas or motion. So for me, it was a no-brainer to get off. But I have nothing but compassion for those that are hooked on that because I can see how that happens. After my kidney transplant, I had a full-time nurse to help. You would. Small Town Jew, yes, I did see that Carissa Collins is pregnant again. Are you surprised? This woman is a one-woman, I'm just going to call her what she is, a disaster area. All those pictures she posts of her children without their permission. I mean, she's built a whole social media platform around using her children the same way that the Duggars use their children. And I don't think that's ever good. And I don't know what's going to happen with her, with Carissa. I'm just going to say this. And I said the same thing about Michelle Duggar. I said at some point they're going to have disaster. Something bad is going to happen. It's kind of like spinning the roulette wheel. Eventually, it's gonna come up double zero, and you're out of the game. And I'm always afraid of that because if you look at the numbers of what happens with women when they have babies, how many times the older you get and the more you've had, the more side effects and stuff. So I'm kind of afraid for her. Should they still prescribe opioids? Java, I don't see any way that they can get around that until they come up with a better class of drugs. Started Overeaters Anonymous. Kira, I wish there was an episode. I wish there was a group of that here. I'm struggling with my weight again. I've gained 20 pounds from COVID. And after having my stroke, I'm a lot less mobile, so I'm not exercising quite like I was, and I'm not losing weight. Food was my first drug. Opioids next. I just want to live. I hear you. And taking ownership for that and doing something about it is way better than just not doing a thing. I'm trying to do the meals and not other stuff. And I don't mean deep fried okra. And so I wanted to talk just a little bit today about Costa Rica's healthcare system versus the Sunday Online Church. Kara, I'm going to have to do that because I was supposed to join worship team yesterday for the first time. I was the only female scheduled to sing. And I hadn't even rehearsed with them. They have yet to hear me sing, but they knew the teams I've been on. And once I said, I've been through training here, and here, it's like, okay, great, you can join us Sunday. So a couple of people from worship team have heard me sing in my old church. So I was joining worship team when I walked in and found the place painted, and I got derailed. So guess what? You may be stuck with me for online church because it's going to take at least 3 or 4 weeks for the paint smell to fade. So Costa Rica, almost everything is available over the counter. You can walk in any pharmacy. If it's some drugs for like bipolar and that are limited, but not all of them. There's no getting opioids unless you have a prescription from your doctor. There's no getting anything like a benzo without a prescription, but everything else you can ask for without a prescription. Even my crazy Lyrica, even my new nighttime blood pressure meds, I can just walk in and ask for it and get them. To me, that's a huge, huge, huge advantage because if you know anything about asthma drugs, when you get the little vials through nebulizer, the way they sell them is in these big boxes of maybe 200 or 300 doses. And even with insurance, they're outrageous. Here, you can buy, if you want to buy 2 vials, you could. When I had to get off what I'd been using from the States and find something here, it allowed me to go into the pharmacy and get 2 vials of this, 2 vials of this, 2 vials of this, to get 2 vials of every one they sold and try them to see which one actually worked for me. And over the counter, it's the same deal. The same kind of over the counter drugs you'll have in the States. Now you may have to write down the actual name of the drug, the name. There are a few that they have that are name brand. Pepto-Bismol. It's one of them. The other one is Benadryl. See my Kirkland Benadryls that came from Price Mart here. So there's that. You can always get those things easily and cheaply there. And the other thing to do with those medical is if you become a resident here, you can participate in the socialized medicine here called the CAHA. What they do is they charge you for that every month if you're a resident or you're a local, and it's usually pretty inexpensive. They base it on income. If you don't have a high income, it's reasonable. Now, it reminds me of military medicine. It's the basics. You're not going to roll into one of their facilities and see a state-of-the-art anything. It's going to be just basic health care in a very utilitarian environment. It won't be anything fancy, but it works. I wish I could get nebulizer meds like that to see what helps me. Small Town Jewel, that was the best thing about the move. I was able to do that. Before, I'd have to buy box, and that gets outrageously expensive, especially when you're just trying something. I remember one neb solution they gave me to try, and I took 1 vial, and it was not the drug for me. So I had to get on Facebook and say, hey, who needs drug, blah, blah, blah. I've got a big box of it. You can have it. I'm not going to use it. But it makes a huge difference for me. And the thing is, we're not taking part in CAHA. We haven't finished our residency package yet. We're still compiling documents because we did fill one out and sent it in right around the time, right before the pandemic. And the pandemic kicked ours out because they said, okay, we're going to kick out everything that was not accepted yet, and you have to apply again. So we're applying again, and it's a lengthy process. So in the meantime, we're using the private medical system here. The private medical system is just like medicine in the States as far as the level of comfort you would receive. It's not utilitarian. I'm struggling with this word. I know this word. It's more like what we have in the West as far as the way it looks, as far as the way they treat you, everything. And you don't end up waiting hours and hours like you wait at the CAHA sometimes. But here's the thing. What they're charging to access that private healthcare here is lower than what I was paying as copays in the States. So I don't worry about it. When I have to go to the doctor, I go to the doctor because I know that the payment is going to be less than the copay would have been in the States. So there's that. And you can submit it to, well, we're lucky. The kind of insurance we have works overseas and in the States. So if you're thinking about moving overseas, talk to your insurance agent first. They may be able to keep carrying you for a while you're applying for your residency, or forever if you're not applying. And if that's the case, what you do is you pay up front here, you submit it to your insurance company, they reimburse you. Hey, Sue Elliott. So that's how it works here. You can get the public socialized medicine here, or you can get the private medicine here. Medically, they're both awesome. One's just a little fancier than the other is the best I can come up with here. Tons of clinics here, tons of private clinics, good ones. And there are a lot of people that come from the States that come down to Costa Rica specifically to get plastic surgery, dental care, and various other things. So there it is. Now, you don't want to talk about what's going on in the community. All right, no, I already started talking a little bit about that. We talked about Nat has reappeared. And as I said earlier, I hope Mr. Roadhog contacts the West Mercia police. I certainly did, because she did sign me up to work as a prostitute. And it was really upsetting because I got all these really vile emails from these guys. And each time I would say, hey, I'm not a prostitute. This is some goof that some idiot has signed me up for. I got death threats and just crazy, crazy, crazy stuff from these guys. So I filed, and I'm a big fan in filing for these things. What has the police department done about her? Nothing that I know of, but here's the thing. It could easily happen. I mean, it could happen that they'll do something. You know what they say about justice? They say that the wheels of justice grind exceedingly slow and fine. I'm going to give the West Mercia police some time to work on this, because a lot of us have reported her to the police department. So clearly they're going to be doing an investigation. Now, I don't know what the law is like in the UK. Here in Costa Rica, it is a joke. I'm just going to come right out and tell you. It is just the jokiest, dumbest thing you've ever laid eyes on. If you go and report shit to the local police, if you're a gringo, they'll always side with the Costa Rican. Always. Unless there is copious evidence to show that what the Tico did was egregious. Then you might get a little... And I see gringos suing gringos here, too, for various things. And the thing you really have to watch out for here is you're required to carry either your passport or a copy of your passport's visa stamp with you at all times here. The police here love to set up roadblocks and check everybody's documents. Here's the thing about me. Usually when I go out, I put my hair up on my head. So I'm here with my gray bun Gray bun, driving my not new car because we have an older car because a lot of the places aren't paved. The road in front of our house is not paved. So we have an older SUV that's got a lot of miles on it because I am not running a brand new car through a river. And God knows I have to do that on a regular basis. Java man, now that is interesting. I know we bought our house. All the documents were in Spanish, and I had to have a official translator with me to translate. And you can't really get mortgages for homes here. Locals can, but if you're gringo, it's almost impossible. You have to have like a alternate funding source. We were fortunate. We didn't have to do that. We bought this place outright with cash. We're building another house outright with cash to avoid that whole thing. But we put a lot of money in this place and we bought it at a bargain basement price. And what they're trying to charge me for taxes is definitely not bargain basement. So yeah, that's the same here with the stupid contracts. You've got to make sure they're in Spanish as well. What makes y'all decide to move there out of all the places you could go? Well, Small Town Jewel, we had been here a lot. We had come on vacation because my husband got fascinated with the place after he started seeing videos people were posting on YouTube about move to Costa Rica, move to Costa Rica. He became fascinated with it. There's no military here whatsoever, so none of the money the government is raising goes towards funding the military. They invest a tremendous amount of money in the educational system. College is free here for Costa Rican residents and students, Costa Rican natives. They put a lot of money into their healthcare system as well, so they have great healthcare, great schooling options. Also, they don't allow homeschooling here. Homeschooling is a crime. If you try to homeschool your child here and somebody finds out, they're going to try to take your children or they're going to deport you. And it's the same thing with vaccinations. I'm waiting to see what shakes down with the COVID vaccinations here. We went back to the States and got vaccinated. But I know a lot of Americans here are refusing any vaccination whatsoever. They're refusing to get it from the Costa Rican government. They're refusing to get it when they go back to the States. Because insert your favorite non-science reason here for not taking the vaccine. Look, I'm not wild about getting vaccines, and I've had a bad reaction to one time that sent me to the hospital. But I believe in that ounce of prevention instead of the pound of cure because I've been through so much with my health. So we've lived here almost 5 years, Sue Elliott. We moved here because of all those different things. The fact that the culture here is so laid back. It's like, it's Monday morning. I'm still in my nightgown. I've done a load of clothes and a load of dishes, and I'm going to wander around and water my plants in a bit. I'm going to go swimming. I'm going to run to town and go to the yarn store because I ran out of something. I mean, it's the most low-key lifestyle on the planet. Oh, Java man. That is so sad. So it's very laid back. It's very casual. I like that. We just could never figure out where for sure we wanted to move to. I thought I wanted to move to Grisha, which is up in the mountains near San Jose, or I wanted to move to Lake Arnall. Grisha, I can breathe. That's the other nice thing about Costa Rica, microclimates. They have so many different microclimates here. You can go up over a mountain and be a completely different climate. Grisha, for me, is the best climate for my asthma. When I go there, I'm sitting on top of the mountain going, I can breathe. I can breathe all the way down the bottom of my lungs. So I love that. I love Arenal. It's a huge man-made lake surrounded by mountains and a couple of volcanoes. So there's that. I love it there. I tend to do okay there with the asthma, except on days when it rains, because when it rains, it holds down the volcanic ash close to the surface and I start wheezing because that volcanic ash is so sulfur filled and I'm super allergic to sulfur for some reason now. So there's that. Hawaii is similar. I would compare it with Hawaii actually because I've been to Hawaii and I think it's a lot like that too with the microclimes and different places you're going. But we're talking now about building a house near a place called Ohancha. on the top of a mountain. And we're going to look at the lot directly behind us, which is up on top of a mountain and has sea views. So I don't know for sure where we're going to buy, but we've decided we're going to have a mountain house, we're going to have a beach house. And it's a lot of it is asthma, a lot of it is there's certain weeks we don't want to be here because the traffic is so bad because of the tourist trade. So it'd be nice to escape from all that. And that's another reason why we're doing that. Cost of living is a lot lower here. That was another reason we were glad to pick it. Cost of living was lower. Housing here on the Gold Coast is problematic because it's now at an all-time high. So you're not going to find cheap houses here on the ocean. That doesn't work. But everywhere else, you'll find much cheaper abodes than in the States. I tell everybody the place we were at in the mountains in Copa, you could rent a house there for $150 a month. I mean, that's nothing. And so everywhere else is a little more expensive. But when you start getting away from the tourist areas, it's beautiful and there's not as much. It's not as expensive. Now, like I said, I want Arnall or the other, and he wants Ohancha. We're both looking at the house right behind the lot right behind us to see if maybe we just need to build overlooking the ocean. I don't know. So those were our reasons. And then when certain political things were enacted, we were like, oh yeah, we're out of here. We're out of here. And it's kind of funny because I'm now hearing from a lot of my friends that I went to church with when I went to Possum Creek who now want to move here because they don't like Biden. And I'm talking to them going, you can't move here. I know you're anti-vax. That would never work here. They've passed a law that in a few days, if you walk into any store, any restaurant, any bank, any theater, any public place where everybody gathers that is not out of doors, they're required to ask you for your COVID vaccination card. And if you don't have it, if you're not vaccinated, you can be turned away, tourist or not. So I'm curious to see how all this is all going to work out. No, I cannot imagine what it'd be like to live next to KJ, Java Man. The only way that would work for me is like I am now. I'm behind a 12-foot high concrete wall. I know my neighbors. I don't interact with them much just because everybody's busy and we're busy. We used to hire Sylvia, live down the street, to work cleaning here. She went away to Nicaragua at the beginning of this pandemic because she's from Nicaragua, and I haven't seen her since. So there's that. The pandemic has just thrown a wrench into everything, a monkey wrench. And Costa Rica is struggling to adapt. That's why I never finished my book on Costa Rica. I'm moving to Costa Rica because every day or two, everything changes. Everything. They might pass this law and then turn around and take it away. When the pandemic first happened, Costa Rica shut down everything. They made us all stay home for 8 weeks, except if you worked at a grocery store or pharmacy or doctor's office. Those are the only places that were allowed to be open. And we were allowed to go out once a week for groceries on a certain day that our license plate was under. And it was hard, but the rate went to zero here very quickly, and then it came back. Sounds like Calvin Ball, kind of like. So KJ would be a definite problem living next to, but I would probably treat her like I treat the more problematic areas here. Bless your heart. And just go on and ignore them. And I don't know what she would do if she had to put out her rainbow flag here. I don't know how the neighbors would react. I don't know if the Costa Ricans are homophobic or not. Gay marriage is a thing here. I've never seen the kind of protests over it that you see in the U.S. None of that. Like I said, it's always Tuesday afternoon here. What was I talking about? I was going a place with the whole thing with the neighbors. I don't think she would like it here because I said before, the police are useless as tits on a boar hog. They just are. And like the other night, maybe a month ago, our next door neighbors had a huge party for the 9-year-old daughter or granddaughter. And they had a full, I want to say mariachi band, but somebody corrected me, but I can't remember what it was, a banda maybe. a big band with horns, the whole 9 yards, playing mariachi style type music. So do you have a dual citizenship? Sue, I'm working on getting my residency again. My papers got kicked out the first time because COVID happened and they shut down everything. And that was the other thing that the Costa Rican government did, and they make it hard to become a resident here. You can move to any other Central American nation, and usually just staying there 6 months is enough for you to get officially qualify officially to be a resident. Here, no, they make you jump through hoops, and it's expensive. It's a long process. It takes a couple of years. Like I said, a couple of years ago, we had our paperwork in, and I'm sorry, I hate having things on the floor. So it takes a long time. You got to provide a crap ton of documents, and they have to be officially translated into Spanish. They have to have a special certain stamp on them that it's called the apostle. You can't have the translations of the apostles done except through 1 month. So mine aren't done. They'll be the last thing that's done. Is everything will be translated and apostoled right before we submit. So that's the deal here. You can become a resident, but they make you work for it. And the benefit that I can see, there's only two real benefits. Well, actually, several. One of the things that's come down because of COVID is that if you become a legal resident here, you are allowed to bring in 2 cars, 1 load of household goods, and pay 0 taxes. That's a big one. Our 2005 Honda CRV we're still driving, we paid $6,000 to import it. And that's without paying the cost of shipping it across the ocean, which was around $1,500. Our household goods, I paid around the same price to import them for the taxes and for the freighting. It was about $1,500. In Iceland, if you build something, you have to first make sure the area is free of elves. Java man, that would be pretty cool. Elf free. Here, this is something that trips up gringos. I saw this trip up 2 people I know personally. One of them is the gal that wrote Happier Than a Billionaire, Nadine. I can't remember what Nadine's last name is. About moving to Costa Rica. She's actually left and gone back to the States. So she has gone back on everything she was saying. Her and her husband, they bought a plot of land that was oceanfront or ocean view in Potrero. Potrero is a nice, rather expensive beach community. They bought their lot of Potrero and they didn't know they didn't have water rights on that. So they couldn't get water service out there. They could have maybe built and had a water tank like a lot of people do when they're outside the U.S.A service ranges. But they didn't do that. And they had sunk so much money into the lot and they had another house they had to sell. It was a mess. They've gone back to the States. I think one of them's parents are having some kind of issue where they need to be cared for. But I think they kind of burned out on living here because they got screwed. Some companies wonder how to put that in their public records. I would say file it under environmental impact assessment. That is exactly where I would file it if I had to do that. Thank God I didn't have to. And we bought something that had already been built upon specifically so we could avoid that, because I have learned you got to ask, is there water? Do you have access to electricity? What's the internet situation here? I have a friend who's quite wealthy that bought this huge tract of land on the mountain overlooking the beach in Tamarindo he was going to put a huge thing there. He was going to do a recording studio. He was going to put an observatory and put a huge microscope on loan from University of Chicago. He was going to do all this stuff with his property. Well, he found out he could not get the internet there. The only internet that he could get would be satellite internet there. And we know that's kind of janky sometimes. So he's sitting there on this huge tract of land that he absolutely cannot use. I feel kind of bad for him. But he ended up buying having a home built, and I think it was the Marriott subdivision here. So you have to be careful when you're buying here. You can get screwed if you're not careful, and especially if you're buying land to build something on. So that's one thing I'm doing. I'm asking my zillions of questions while we're looking at lands, and we have access to internet. What's this water situation? All those things. If you have to truck water in and fill a water tank during dry season, it is outrageous. It's whatever the market will bear. So you know right offhand that that might be a huge expense. Electricity is just about the same, maybe a little higher here than everywhere else. And gasoline is $6 a gallon. But we don't go very many places. If we take a long, 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 long trip, we will sometimes fly or take a bus. Public transportation here is fabulous. It's cheap. It's affordable. I could take a bus from here to Tamarindo for under 50 cents. I could go on to Langosta for probably another 10. So it's very inexpensive to ride the bus here. There's Collectivo pirate taxis everywhere. It's very cheap to ride those guys. Do you have a lot of friends there where you have lived a long time now? Small town Joel? Surprisingly, no. I have a few friends, including my friend that keeps bugging me to do shit, and that's where my husband is now. He's driving her daughter to school. That friendship has turned problematic for me because every time you turn around, she's begging us to do something for her because she didn't know how to do it. Her husband left her. So that friendship has turned a little weird. The problem with long-term friends here, and my husband and I were talking about this the other day, is the fact that people move in and out of here like busboys through a restaurant. What do I mean by that? Most people I know who are Americans hit the 2-year mark and they leave. I would say it's probably like 90% of Americans, maybe 80%, but it's a large, large number. So you might develop a friendship with somebody, and the end of 2 years, they may go back. One of my closest friends went back because her and her husband started divorcing. And that happens here too because you have to get used to the culture here. You can't change a culture. And I know people that just go absolutely ape, you know what, over the culture, and they can't change the culture and they can't accept it. They can't live within it. So they leave. Why was that a problem? It's because of stuff like calling the plumber and he might come out 3 weeks later. It's just little cultural things like that you have to put up with. Every time my husband starts getting bent out of shape over those things, I say, it's the Ticos. That's what they do. Why are you upset? You know this is their culture. Why are you trying to change their culture? What's different about the culture? There is a lot, small town, that is different. The biggest thing that trips more and more Americans up is the fact that, like I just mentioned, you call a plumber 3 weeks later, they might show up. Say, mañana, mañana, mañana. I'll show up on Sabado, just Saturday. Okay. So you're looking for them to show up the next day, which is a Saturday, and you're looking and looking and looking. They don't show up. You call, nobody returns your call. You're calling them over and over. They're not calling. And then they come 1 to 2 to 3 Saturdays later, and you get upset with them and say, I told you I would come. They can't understand why that would be a problem. Their culture says that it's perfectly acceptable to show up late, to show up not at all. I've also learned the hard way here a few times that if you're having work done on your house, which we, like I said, we have really feathered our desk here. We've done a lot of things here, and we're about to remodel that kitchen. That kitchen remodel has to happen. And I'm kind of dreading that because I'm going to be working with the TICO workforce. And one of the things that I've learned here is even the best TICO workforce, they work like fiends, like dogs to noon. And then they'll go off for lunch, do a couple of shots of guaro or whiskey or whatever, and come back a little tipsy. And so you don't get as much work out of them in the afternoon as you do the morning. And if you were to say, why did you get so drunk on your lunch hour? I say, because it's just that's what we do. So that's the sort of thing I'm talking about. And the other thing that gets to people hard here that I see a lot of people go back for is the fact that they can't control things as easily as they can in the States. You might be able to yell at a plumber in the States and get good service or speed them up. You can't do that here. You just cannot do that. Ticos do not understand you being angry. And the other thing with the Tico culture is they won't tell you anything unpleasant. Say, let me think, circumstance did that happen to us? Okay. Java Man, that wouldn't does not surprise me for having been to Russia. It's a whole different world there. One of the craziest things here is they won't tell you anything unpleasant. They will lie to you pleasantly, but they won't tell you bad stuff. Our transmission in our car is slipping. So I told my husband, it's like, go get the transmission filter and the fluids changed, because I used to have a car that routinely did that when it hit so many miles. And so he went to have it done, and the place said, no, you don't need that. You just need us to clean your solenoids, blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay. So he dropped the car off. And when we went to pick it up, they said, we can't fix it. We can't fix it. And after a lot of angry discussions, in which they kept lying about, well, it can't be fixed, I can't tell you why, they finally admitted that there was transmission problems. They'd run on the machine. There were problems with the transmission. But it took a long time to get around to this. And these are people we know pretty well. They just didn't want to tell us the unpleasant truth. And I've had other people work on the car where they say, okay, I need you to work on X, Y, and Z. We pick it up and say, oh, I worked on it, it's fine. And you're looking at it and saying, no. My husband had his motorcycle worked on. They were supposed to replace a fuse box. All they did was take duct tape and put the fuses together and shoved it back in there. So they may not have the time or the parts to do it, but they're, rather than tell you, hey, we can't do this, they will come up with a whole different excuse altogether. And if you're like me, you know to read behind the lines because you've been here long enough. You're going, okay. And the other thing that kills people here is a lack of shopping. It's kind of funny here because the Gold Coast is all these beautiful beach towns. People buy here. There are no things for sale here now. They're all gone because after the COVID restrictions were lifted here, a lot of people moved here from the States. And all the property that had been sitting for 2 years on the sales were snapped up like that. But there's very little shopping here. I mean, decent shopping. Like you got to go get, say you need to go get special battery, blah, blah, blah. You need a yarn, you need a new notebook, you need just regular things. If you can find them, you might have to run around to 10 different shops. There's no, like, even the Walmart here. You see, what I've learned is you see something here and you know it's something you're going to need in the future, buy it. Because there is no easy shopping. Before COVID, I could order from Amazon and have it delivered here, no problem. Now, not quite. Now they've stopped delivering here. Duct tape is awesome, isn't it? You can fix all kinds of stuff with it. Duct tape is my go-to. I was fussing at my husband the other night because I was putting the Christmas tree away and I needed duct tape to close the box. So I had to run around the house and figure out where he left the duct tape. I'm gonna let you know the secret about my husband. My husband is Pollyanna. He is like Mr. Positive all the time, unless you manage to work his last nerve like some Ticos do every now and then. Then he gets gripey. The funny of that is that Mr. Pollyanna is also the nutty professor. He loses shit all the time. He puts down his pen and can't find it. Where did I leave my glass of milk? He is just that way. So for me to ask him where the duct tape is a major thing. It's like, well, I don't know. Maybe it's on the table outside. Did I put it with the tools? So I had to go on the duct tape adventure hunt to find the damn duct tape to close the box, to put the Christmas tree away. And I know that about him. I knew before I married him. My father always said, you married a nutty professor. You know that, Mr. Super intellectual who can think you under the table, but can't find what he did with his watch. And there's a lot of truth to that. So we just embrace it. We both know it. So he gets cranky with the culture. I got cranky the first year with the culture until I got used to it. And I'm going to tell you something. The first 4 months here were hell on earth for me. We were living in a room made out of plastic panels in somebody's garage in Cope de Dota, which is an hour south of San Jose. Okay. We were living in this room. There was no heat. Didn't need air conditioning because it was too cold in Cope de Dota to ever use air conditioning. So we're in this room, plastic panels on the garage, constantly hearing the family's cars. And our car was on a ship. We were walking everywhere or taking the bus. Copain, a little teeny tiny town, only had bus service 3 times a day. There was literally no shopping. There was one tiny little convenience store that had like pop and candy and a few other things. So anytime that I had to go get something, I had to schedule to catch the 12:30 bus. I mean, it was just a mess. So basically, what I have learned about Copay is that, well, about life in general, is you can't, if you're that unhappy like I was, and we also had some landlord problems. Landlord was nice, but the food she served was just, like I said, I try to eat lower down on the glycemic index because I'm one of those borderline diabetics that takes metformin to stay stable, but usually is stable without it. Sometimes I can get off metformin for 6 months or so, but I know how to eat now. And one day the landlord served us a meal that was noodle salad, mashed potatoes, potato chips, and the main course was enchiladas made out of cheese and mashed potatoes. I took one look at that starch fest and was like, no, if I eat like that, I'll be sick. So I just told her I wasn't hungry, and I learned to always keep a cutting board, knife, fruits and vegetables, and canned tuna in the room just for those moments when the landlord went crazy and every dish was some form of a potato or starch, because I couldn't eat that. And there were times when she served things I wouldn't eat, like black bean soup. I don't care for it. Or fried trout. I'm not a trout. I like the Gulf Coast type fish. I'm not a trout eater. I just never have been. It's just not one of my things. So Copain was really hard. There was nothing to do. You had days without electricity or internet. It was raining every single afternoon. We were staying in this little plastic paneled room with no heat, no air conditioning, and 5 quilts in the bed. And we were still like, give me your body heat every night we went to bed. So if you need a cold climate, Copain would be perfect for you. And there are some pretty nice Americans living there that I'm still in touch with. The that I'm sorry, that is their I don't know why I'm almost belching so much today. That's their deal. I know a lot of Americans that live there, but it wasn't for me. I went from my beautiful cottage home in Northern Virginia with every luxury and shopping you could imagine to living in a plastic paneled room under someone's garage. It was zero shopping, zero anything to do, no internet much, no, not always electricity. So it was kind of hell. It was a huge culture shock for me, a huge one, until I learned to get around, until I learned the bus system. And as soon as I could get around and I knew I could always escape by taking the bus, I would do that. I would take the bus and go off all kinds of different places on my own, because my husband was teaching English then. He was teaching English at a TOEFL type school where they are training these kids towards getting a scholarship to go to a university in America. It's the same thing he's doing now. He's doing TOEFL training. So that's his jam. That was there, and that was, so he was busy there. So he was happy with it. It was just me. I had a horrible time in Copain. I tell everybody I cried every day for the first month I was there. And then when we hit the 3 month mark, I mean, all kinds of crazy things happened to us in Copain too. One of the craziest was the night the church burned down. There was a Catholic church. It was a couple of 100 years old. It was all wood. And thank God I took oodles of photographs of it before it burned down. But Um, there was one bar in town called the Kamakuri. And we were told to never go there because it was all Nicaraguans. That's one thing that's interesting here. Grunt jobs, the Ticos will not do. They get the Nicaraguans who have come down from Nicaragua because they're so desperately poor to do them for almost nothing. So this bar was almost always inhabited by Nicaraguans. There were frequent flights and all kinds of crazy stuff that went on there. So they didn't have fights there. We'd hear them. We were only like 4 blocks away, but if the fight was loud enough, we'd hear it. So one Saturday night, I went to bed about 8 p.m. because in Copiah, there's nothing to do once darkness falls and it's raining and you're cold. You're going to put on your winter nightgown with a sweater over it. You're going to crawl under your 5 quilts. You're going to roll over to your husband, stick your cold feet on him and go, give me your heat. So we're sleeping hard. At midnight, we got woken up with this terrible racket. Squealing tires, screaming voices. We said, oh, they must be having a fight down at the Kamakuri. And we could look from our house and see. It was like a straight shot. So I opened the door to the cabina, to the little room. And when I put my hand on the knob, the knob was hot. It wasn't hot. It was like warm, I guess. We better stuck my head out and saw the Catholic Church was on fire. And we were like bumped up against the Catholic Church with this guest house. And we like, oh, holy, you know what? And we threw on our clothes, grabbed our passports and our wallets and ran out into the night because we were afraid that the whole building we were in was going to be burned down because you could feel the heat of the oppressive heat from where we were staying. And all the screaming and tires we'd heard was our landlord, who also ran a bakery and a little soda restaurant there, hauling all of her propane cooking tanks into her husband's truck and driving them far away, driving them all very far away. So just happened to be one of the craziest nights ever. The fire department took them 45 minutes to show up because we were so far from everything there. And it was way up in the mountains. We watched this beautiful 200-year-old wooden church just burn completely to the ground. The fire was so intense that it melted the glass covers on the street lights nearest the church. It became molten glass just hanging down. But I also got to see the most beautiful thing I've ever seen happen. It was kind of like, you remember that scene in The Grinch Who Stole Christmas, where the Whovillians came out and they're all holding hands and singing around what once was a Christmas tree. I saw something, hey, good to see you too, Anna Chip. I saw something that rivaled that. I saw a community service. The church was burned down the next day. The community came together. And they didn't ring the church because a lot of it was still blocked off. But they went down to the bus stop and everybody was holding hands and praising God and saying, this is not going to stop us. We're going to continue on. And it was the most touching thing I've ever seen. It was a beautiful sight to see. And nobody was fighting. There was no, in the States, everybody would have been and everybody would have been fighting and calling that one an idiot, But there was none of that. I was just incredibly touched by the peace here. That was one of those things that I was like, okay, now I get it. And just because I'm not familiar with your culture and I'm having to learn it, it doesn't mean that the culture is bad. That's one of the things I think that Americans, the mistakes they make when they go other countries. They don't understand every place has its own culture, and it's not your job to change it. Your job is just to appreciate the culture. The people here are their biggest asset, and they're some of the country. They're some of the kindest, nicest people you'd ever want to meet, even though they might not tell you the truth about everything. But there's a real kindness here that you wouldn't see anywhere else. That Amber chick, I saw that after Katrina in Louisiana and up and down the eastern seaboard. and where people just came together to support those who'd lost everything because it was such a devastating thing. There is something that comes out in Americans that's still kind and good when these things happen, and I'm glad. I just wish that we could sustain it all the rest of the time. I don't, you know, I'm not one for fighting, even political fighting. For a while there, I was into that, but no, life is too short, and there's just too much out there to do and see and experience to spend all your time fighting. So there's that. Okay, I've been almost an hour and I didn't mean to. I gotta put clothes on. I gotta go run and get things today. I gotta go buy my husband grits because he's out of grits and he's having something of a fit. I have to get bananas, other things like that. And that's the other thing I gotta throw out there that's the best about here. The produce is awesome, especially the tropical fruits. They're the best. You can get them here so cheap. The other day I bought pineapples and I bought 3 of them for 1,000 colones or $1.80. You can't do that in the States. Okay, you guys, y'all have a great day. Be blessed. And yeah, think about what you'd like to ask me as far as Costa Rica, because I am going to continue. I'm going to probably do one Costa Rican stream a week. Love you guys. Have a good day.